Hey, what's up, Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Li-Ning Yushuai 18 Ultra Bruce Lee edition. That is a mouthful. But more than the long name of them, the thing that is most interesting about them is that they straddle two different worlds of basketball shoe. One being the ultra containing, ultra protective, the other being ultra lightweight, ultra speed focused, and fast. It is incredible that this shoe can actually sit in both worlds at the same time. Let's see how it does it. And thanks, Li-Ning, for sending me a pair of these over to check out. However, this video is by no means sponsored, and all opinions, good, bad, and different, as always, are all my own. Now, starting off in the uppers, I know that it looks nice, like visually, the stitching is appealing. However, what I like about it is what you can see from the inside. It is a super thick stitching too. So the foxing and stitching elements on these are really substantial. You've got EVA that goes all the way around the heel counter. There is also an internal heel counter as well on this. So it's flexible, yet gives a little bit of bulk, a little bit of protection to the back of your heel, your ankle, and everything like that. But then as you go into the forefoot, that stitching is just, number one, it's lightweight because there's TPU strands there, but then there's also textile strands that go through there that are just super chunky as well. Now, the tongue is pretty weird in all the best ways, to be honest. So, I mean, it is a three-piece, ankle entry, right? It's a three-piece tongue, I should say. But it's one piece that goes into the gusset. A lot of times the gusset is stitched into the tongue, or it's a different type of material that anchors it to the strobel, whereas this is just all one piece. Number one, it is decently flexible, right? It does move a lot of different ways. It is pretty thin, except in the ankle collar where you're actually gonna need it to be a little bit thicker so that the laces don't irritate you. But because, like I said, it is that one piece and it's molded into the gusset, it stays put so well. So yeah, it's lightweight, but it also sucks your foot into the shoe like you wouldn't believe. Really simple design, but just used very well. Now, the lace line of this is a very thick stitching directly into the uppers of the shoe. So number one, the laces do lay more horizontal, so you're not gonna get really any lace irritation from the tongue. The one thing I did notice is the break-in on the distal tongue, right in the forefoot or the vamp of the shoe starts. That is where the break-in of these is the most substantial, right? It does take a few hours, I would say, to break that in to where it feels really buttery. It does start to feel great, but that is where you're gonna start to get the most bending when you put them on. Now, if you look at this on the upper breathability test, which is really incredible, only heated up 111.8 degrees, which to me is a real feat of engineering, because if you look at the underside of it again, it's all backed, right? Like all that stitching is then hard backed on the inside, right? There's not a lot of breathing channels except for number one, the tongue, and then on the very top of the shoe. The materials in this, they just accept heat pretty well. So you look at the breathability mapping of them, not a ton of fog coming out besides the tongue, which is where you're seeing the most egress. So I think in this one, it's really the case that the materials themselves just are able to handle heat, and tongue is able to expel enough moisture to where, yes, it's a very substantial upper, but it's also a decently breathing upper as well. But getting into the real meat and potatoes of the uppers, if you look at the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, the interesting thing is the burr works through the thicker, chunkier textile weave, but it does not make any impression whatsoever on that super light TPU weave. I mean, it's kind of a microcosm for the rest of the shoe, right? The heel slippage on these is absolutely none. The containment is the best I've ever seen in a shoe, yet the breathability and the weight of the uppers is really outstanding, right? So it should be a shoe that is like a real lightweight, non-containing shoe that you really need to use a lot of your own muscle to contain your foot. However, like I said, these are the most containing shoes I have ever put on. I'd say as long as you get through that initial little bit of break-in on these are by far and away the best uppers I've ever seen on a shoe. And getting into the midsole teardown, this is really where I was kind of shocked to see what was inside of this. Now, number one, it is just an entire bed of boom foam, their thermoplastic foam, which is nothing new. We've seen this before. But it's the carbon fiber shank that goes nearly full length, right? There has some break points, right? But it kind of spans the whole shoe on the perimeter. But it's the fact that it's almost top loaded, right? There is just a thin layer of boom foam over top of it in some areas. Now, yeah, there is less of the carbon fiber in the heel and the forefoot than there is in the midfoot. However, there is still carbon fiber that's going to be underneath of your toes as well as your heel, but that boom foam is so protective over top of it that you do not feel it. And I've seen some other prototype shoes come through that where there's carbon fiber that's pretty top loaded in the rear foot, where I mean, it's killing your heels, and on this one, you do not even feel it. That's just a real testament to boom foam and how protective it is, how resilient it is underneath of your heel that you can have this full-length shank. and really not feel it, but you're still getting all the performance benefits from it, which is really interesting. Now you do have a secondary shank below it. It does look like it's really thick from the bottom. However, it's mostly just molded foam under there. However, it's still plastic. I mean, it's still there. So if you look at the bounce height test on this, got 42 centimeters in the heel and then 47 in the forefoot. I think in the heel, I may have caught a little bit of that carbon fiber, whereas on the forefoot, I got all boom foam. That is pretty typical for Li-Ning boom foam. It is a super explosive foam. The thing though that I don't think I appreciated about boom foam until I found out there was carbon fiber underneath my heel is how shock absorbing it is as well. Typically, I always thought of it as just more of an energy returning foam, whereas, you know, playing in these now and really not even noticing the carbon fiber underneath of me, you really got to start to give it its props for it, also its shock absorbing capabilities. So in terms of comfort as well as performance, honestly, it's fantastic even with that high of a carbon fiber shank. Now getting into the outsole tread, it is this kind of broken up, flat, radial pattern going through the shoe, but then it also has this macro pattern here with these little, you know, cutouts here in the forefoot, these circular cutouts. Now what that's going to do is allow a little bit easier transition step, a little bit easier rocking back and forth, but because there is these macro divots there, you still get a pretty decent traction as well as that, and then you get this, you know, super wide. I mean, I've never seen a lateral flange this wide on a shoe that has this much of an in-flare, which we'll talk about in the fit section. Now, if you look at the grip test ramp, this thing slipped at 45 degrees, which, you know, I think is pretty decent. It's not the JB1, which was insane, but, you know, the grip is still, especially initial grip, is still outstanding. These things did not pick up dust nearly like I thought they would. They do pick up some dust, but like the JB1, it kind of doesn't matter. They still grip through it pretty well, and just the compound of the rubber, because it is a little bit softer, but it also is a little more durable. I mean, if you look at the outsole durability test on this thing, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper, not yet a millimeter of damage. I mean, almost, but not a millimeter of damage on this. You know, with these, like in the JB2s, I really had to measure my footwork for a while because they were just grabbing and containing so well. I mean, there wasn't a lot of give on this. When you want these things to stop, they stop. The flange on them is so wide. I mean, there's no going anywhere. I mean, if you're a big dude like me, if you're top heavy, I mean, you're going over. So you definitely have to kind of get used to the profile of these, and especially when we get into the fit section, that there's a caveat there as well. But in terms of grip, containment, you want to stop, that this really is it. But where I think everything comes together on the 18s is in the speed ratio. These things come in at a 3.01, a shank score of 0.5, brings them up to a 3.51, and I think that's exactly where they belong. I mean, they belong with most super shoe running shoes. The midsole foam, super explosive. The full length shank, super explosive. They're lightweight enough, and because they're a little bit more inflared, a little more tapered, these things go from 0 to whatever you're running super quick, right? They get up and down the court so fast. Your strides feel like you're on moon shoes. And I think that's where these things shine the most, right? Is that they're super containing and protective, but they're also lightning fast. So, I mean, and like I said, in terms of straddling both worlds there on the basketball court, this is just, I think, as good as it gets. Like I said, the one thing about these that is pretty bizarre is their fit. Now, these things come in at a pretty standard length and width, right? I mean, the width is actually a little bit more forgiving, to be honest, and the uppers are a little bit more accommodating, but these things come in at a 15-degree in-flare, which is insane. Now, you don't notice it as much because the lateral flange is so wide, so it's hidden a little bit, and that in-flare is a way to make the shoe a little more streamlined. It makes it feel a little bit quicker. But if you're somebody with an out-flared foot, right, you're just going to be banging right into that. So that's one caveat of these. Now, the thing is that they are so protective in terms of the arch that somebody with a flatter foot, as long as you're not super out-flared, they're fine for it. It's just, you just got to watch out for someone with like a Taylor's bunion, prominent styloid. That's where you're going to have the fit issue. So I would say a real narrow foot, as long as you're not super out-flared, you could probably go down a half size and these get even more weight reduction. I mean, that's really a nice performance boost. A medium and 2E foot, I think, just go true to size, like I said, unless you're the opposite shape of these. A 4E, I'd probably go up 1/2 size or 1 size even, because there really is no heel slippage on them. Now, in terms of the snake bitten foot, I do think with an orthotic in these, I think these are probably the most protective shoe out there, period. Now, in terms of plantar heel pain, right, something like plantar fasciitis bursitis, when you first have these, yeah, they are amazing. It's just, I do wonder over the course of like 3-4 months, does that boom foam start to wane a little bit? You start to feel that carbon fiber shank. I think as long as you have an orthotic in there, like I said, that's why I said about the orthotics, I think that at that point, there really is no issue there. So I would say as long as you have an orthotic in these, I think for really anything, they're great. Shin splints, you know, Achilles tendonitis, plantar fasciitis, whatever, even an ankle sprainer. I can't believe I'm saying this for a shoe with a 15-degree inflare, that they're not bad for. But the one thing I will say is because they grip so hard and because they contain so hard, if you are somebody that, like I said, maybe is a little bit of a heavier player and maybe is prone to a little bit of instability, you might just want to make sure that you know, go half speed in these for a while, because like I said, they will grip and you will go over if you don't watch it. So I did. So like I said, you just might want to give these a little bit of time. So it's not necessarily the inflare in them that's doing it. It's the fact that they grip and contain just so well, there's just not a lot of give. So if you're someone with instability or an ankle sprain like that and you want to buy these, just give it a little bit of time for, I guess, the shoe to break you in, not you necessarily break the shoe in. And in terms of the all-important playability, you probably know what I'm going to say about these, but honestly, these were one of the best playing shoes I've ever put on. I mean, just the feeling of launch, the feeling of lift out of these, the ease getting just around the rim, just doing my circles over and over and over again around the rim, doing my videoing on them. Just super easy, right? You know, when I play in these shoes, I'll play in them, but I won't video just so I can actually pay attention to what I'm doing, and then, you know, I'll do a video day with them. And the day I was videoing with them, I just really wasn't noticing the fact that I was going over and over again. Usually I'm just, you know, bending down over, you know, breathing heavy. These really keep your legs feeling super resilient. And because they grip so crazily on the ground, if you're somebody with really good footwork and you're somebody that can really create space, these are a shoe to really aid in that, right? Like you can really, really put the brakes on these and really stop in your tracks. So I think, you know, also they're pretty nimble shoes because they are a little bit lighter, and because they are pretty form-fitting around your foot. They're also pretty nimble around the hoop, right? You can do some interesting things in the air as well as on the ground. So really, I don't think it matters what you're wanting to do in these. I think that they pretty much have you covered. These are one of the most well-rounded shoes I think I've ever put on, to be honest. And they remind me a lot of almost like the Way of Wade 10, the Fission 8, kind of put into one shoe, right? You know, the kind of the best of those two shoes, and it's in here. I mean, I really just, I can't get over what these are capable of for the weight of them. I think that's really the tail of the tape right there. It's the weight plus the performance. But I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, especially since so many people have asked me about these, asked me to review these, and I'm sure glad I did get my hands on a pair, because like, to me, they really are a combination of a lot of shoes that I kind of wished would kind of get, you know, combined together. And I think that just the output of these is just so incredible. So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you want to see their sibling to the Yushuai 18 Ultra, the Li-Ning JB2 go under the knife, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your arbor and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.